Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Thursday, July 20th, 2023, and it's 6:30 in the morning. That roaring sound that you hear is my $5 kettle. It's a very loud kettle, and it takes a long time to bring water to a boil. And it's a bit of a dangerous kettle, as I've mentioned before, because it doesn't have any safety features. It doesn't have an automatic shut-off or anything like that. It doesn't have a whistle, so it's not like I can turn on the kettle and forget about it. And then when it comes to a boil, it will whistle, or when it comes to a boil, it will automatically shut off. It will just keep trucking. It'll just keep boiling until it boils dry and then probably bursts into flames. So I have to keep an eye on it, and it's so loud I don't even know really when the water has come to a boil. Like normally with a kettle you can tell by the sound. It gets to a point, you can hear the rolling boil. But with this kettle I can't, so I have to watch it, and then the lid has two little holes in the top, and then if I see giant geysers of steam coming out of those two holes, then I know it's actually reached a boil. But in some rooms, like in this room where I have the kettle down on the floor, I can't really see the steam that clearly against the yellow paint of the wall. So I'm always looking over there going, are you? It seems to take a long time to boil. So haven't you come to a boil yet? Anyway, so I decided to just fire up the camera, and then when the water is ready, then I'll stop and pour my coffee. Oh, there's a change of sound. The lid is starting to rattle. So it's going nuclear. Yeah, we're getting close. So yeah, it's Thursday, July 20th. It's actually the second day of the new year, according to the Islamic calendar. The New Year celebrations were yesterday. Though I didn't really witness any celebrations per se, other than a lot more people around. There were people, they come home and visit with their family, and they have meals together, and then I assume there's a special service at the mosque. The morning announcements, or the morning prayers this morning, it's about 5 o'clock in the morning from the mosque, seemed to be much louder and more involved. They went on for much longer than I'm used to, so maybe there are special things going on at the mosque. But there weren't New Year's Eve and New Year's Day celebrations that I'm aware of, like big events, anything like that. But it did feel different because everybody had the day off. Schools were closed, businesses were closed, government offices were closed. So everybody had a holiday. So that I'll talk about what I did on the holiday in a minute. Aha! I can see some steam billowing, so it's time to pour myself a cup of coffee. My coffee is ready, and I poured it into my cup behind me. Just wanted to show you my kettle in case you forgot what it looked like. I bought this kettle mainly because it was pretty much the only one I could find that was light enough that I could carry with me. And I like it a little bit because it has an unusual construction where it has a very thin cord, like a normal electrical cord with a normal plugs. Most kettles draw a lot of power, so they need the big plugs, the big 3-prongers with a grounding wire, and they have a very, very thick cord, and everything is very heavy duty. But this one has just a very typical household cord, normal ones. It's very lightweight, though I think sometimes I get the sense it's not really built for that, because this part here, the plug that goes into the kettle, can get very, very hot. And if you do forget about the kettle and let it run for a long time, the rubber here starts to melt. And I noticed that on the inside, some of the contact points in there, the rubber has melted and started to burn a little bit. So you have to be careful using this beast. I keep intending to buy a more traditional electric kettle that travelers use, like a lightweight electric kettle. And I never get around to it, but I kind of like a kettle like that better because it's open, like an open pot, and I can also use it to cook noodles and things like that. Those very small travel kettles. They're designed to just boil water for 1 cup of coffee. They're nice because they're small and light and very well made, I guess. But you couldn't do any cooking with them. You couldn't cook noodles or anything like that, or boil eggs, which I do relatively, not often, but I do that from time to time with this kettle. It's nice to have the option. So one of the big events of the last couple of days, or the big news, is that I got connected to the internet with my phone. And I spent an entire day just about, ended up being a full day by the time the dust settled, going into Bukitingi on my bicycle. And I went to the Telkomsel office, and I brought all my phones with me, and I just presented everything to them and said, can you fix this? This is my problem. What can I do about it? And when I did that day, I recorded an audio vlog where I took this microphone and had it around my neck as I was riding my bicycle, and I kind of narrated the whole experience as best I could, cycling down to Bukitingi and then going to the office. And I even recorded, I included in the video a little bit of audio from inside the Telkomsel office. It's not very clear because this is designed to pick up my voice and my voice only. So even in a quiet office, I was speaking with the clerks at Telkomsel, and they were like right beside me, but you can barely make out their voices. And I realized as I was doing that there's a little bit of an ethical problem with recording audio like that, because the microphone is underneath my shirt, because I do that just because it cuts the wind noise down. Instead of having it outside and having a big wind muff on it, I just put it under my shirt. So nobody sees the microphone. I mean, if you're walking around with a video camera, people see that you're recording. And then if I would go into the Telkomsel office, I wouldn't keep recording video normally. And if I did, I would ask for permission. But now I found all day long, this was busy recording audio all the time, because it just basically records audio the whole day. It's just the way it works. So now I'm suddenly going in and out of like Telkomsel offices, and I'm recording what everybody is saying around me, but they don't know that they're being recorded. So, there are some ethical concerns there. But in this case, I was just asking the clerk. She says to me when I walk into the office, welcome to Telkomsel, and what can I do for you, sir? And I say, I'm having trouble with my phone. I can't connect to mobile internet. And she asks me some questions about my phone and when I got my SIM card and when I came to Indonesia, things like that. And I went through the system. So it's not like I was having a deep personal conversation. So I don't think it's not a big deal recording that sort of interaction. And I included just a snippet of it in the audio video. But as I said, it is something to think about when suddenly you're secretly recording sound everywhere you go. You have to consider what that means. And so I recorded that whole day, and the whole thing is in this audio video podcast journal. I have to come up with a name for these things. So I don't have to retell that whole story, but the basic idea is that I keep trying to make this distinction because it's an important one. My problem had nothing to do with the SIM card, really. The problem was the phone itself. Because, when you go to a new country, I come here to Indonesia, I have my phone, but then I have to get an Indonesian SIM card. So you have to get a SIM card so that you can connect with mobile internet inside that country. And my SIM card is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But they have a new policy in Indonesia, which I've talked about at length, where you have to register, or you don't have to, they do it for you when you get a SIM card. They register the IMEI number of your phone with Indonesian customs. And your phone will work only because customs allows it to work. And it turns out that there is a time limit on that. Your registration period, for me, is a maximum of 90 days. And then when you reach the end of that 90-day period, regardless of your SIM card status, the phone itself is cut off. Customs puts a block on it. So this phone will not work in Indonesia anymore. And that was the problem I was facing. My first phone got blocked, so I had to switch to a second phone, and that second phone got blocked. And that's when I went to Telkomsel. And it turns out it was a little bit complicated. I won't go into it in depth. But they told me that my initial registration period for this phone was 60 days. They looked up my record on their computer and they said to me, "Oh, sir, you requested 60 days." And I said, "No, no, I didn't. I didn't request anything. I don't even know what's going on. I just came in and asked for a SIM card, and then I sat there for an hour while they did stuff on their computer, and they gave me a SIM card, and I left, and I paid for it. I didn't request 60 days. I didn't do anything. I didn't have a clue what was going on. How could I even request anything? But when I did get my SIM card, they registered it with customs for 60 days, and then it was cut off. But that is good news and bad news. It's bad news because it was cut off, but good news is I still had 30 days left on the overall 90-day limit. So when I went in a couple days ago, they said, "Oh, we can give you another 30 days because you haven't used up all of the 90 days yet." And they asked me, "Well, would that be okay?" And I says, "Well, no, it's not okay, because after 30 days, you're going to cut me off again, and I'll be exactly where I am now, unable to do anything. Like, I won't be able to have a working smartphone in Indonesia. So no, that's not okay, but if that's all you can do for me, yes, please, can I have another 30 days? And then she sat down at her computer, and I swear she typed for an hour. It was unbelievable how complex it was. And, just typing, screen, new screen, typing, new screen. It went on for so long, which explains why there's such a long waiting period at Telkomsel. Like, if you go there at a busy period, they might even send you away for the day because they know they'll never get to you, because each customer's SIM card issue takes so long to resolve. And some weird things went on in my case as well. Things just took a very long time. And it's a very serious issue. There's a profound difference between the experience in Indonesia and Malaysia. The last time I went back to Malaysia, I landed at KLIA at the airport. I'm sailing through the airport terminal, and there is a Digi desk there. And I stopped there and said, "I would like a SIM card, please." And I gave the man my phone. And I'm sure it wasn't 2 minutes, but it felt like 2 minutes. And he handed my phone back to me, and I had a SIM card. I didn't really have to do anything. I had to give him my passport, of course, and he took a picture of my passport. That has to be connected to the SIM card. But he just did it really quickly, and 2 minutes later, I'm sailing, and everything's up, everything's running, and I have a SIM card. In Indonesia, it could take over an hour, an hour and a half of a lot of work to do, a lot of, it's much more complex. And the control systems and identity systems are much more complex, where there's even a stage where they give me my passport and they ask me to open it to the information page and hold it beside my head. And then they have to take a picture of me holding my passport, and then that is added to my record as well. So, as I mentioned in the video, or in the audio podcast video journal, it really feels like I'm at the police station. It's like you're posing for a mugshot, or you're being kidnapped. You know how kidnappers traditionally would make the victim, the kidnapped person, hold a copy of the day's paper so that you can see the date on it. Take a picture of them holding the paper. That's what it feels like. I'm holding my passport, and they take a photo of me. It feels very, very serious. And in fact, in order to give me 30 days, this woman had to go back to the office, and she told me, "Well, I have to get permission from my supervisor to give you these 30 days to even initiate the process." And she asked me all kinds of questions about my personal movements, what I'm doing in Indonesia, how long I was here before, and then what country did I go to. I went to Malaysia, and how long did you stay there, and why did you come back? She was asking me immigration style questions, like digging deep into my movements and my personal reasons for even being in Indonesia. And then she conveyed all this to her supervisor, and then he could say yes or no that we're going to give this man, access to the mobile internet in Indonesia. And luckily he said yes. And then they had to do all that computer stuff. Like I said, it just took a very long time. And then my record was shipped off to customs. And as she told me, well, it will take about 2 hours for customs to review all the documents we sent them, and then they will make a decision, and then they may or may not, turn on your phone again. So absolutely crazy. I never imagined it could be this complicated. But that's what I spent one day doing. It was a fun day, though. It was nice to get on the bicycle and ride into Bukit Tinggi. Yeah, it was fun. It was an interesting day. Did a little bit of shopping, had to buy some coffee and things like that. So that was that day. And then that night was New Year's Eve. I don't think they don't really call it New Year's Eve. It's not like the Western New Year's Eve. There's no big party and fireworks and ringing in the new year. None of that is taking place. But it was the last day of the current year, that night. And I was here in my room, and I started hearing sounds. This was actually relatively late at night. I was already settled in for the night, and I heard a lot of unusual noise here, like movement, people walking, the floor creaking, lights were turning on, and I was like, oh, that's kind of odd. I wonder what's going on. And then the next morning, I woke up and went down to the bathroom. The bathroom that I use is sort of down the hall here. And then as I approached the bathroom, the door of the bathroom opened. Like normally I'm the only person that uses that bathroom. And then the door opened, and a woman and a young girl came out, mother and daughter came out of the bathroom. And I'm like, whoa, good morning. I didn't know who these people were. They just sort of appeared. And it turns out that a family was staying here. Like, this house is owned by a local family, of course. I met them while I was traveling on my bicycle to come to Bukit Tinggi, and they offered me this house as a place to stay while I'm in Bukit Tinggi. It's a family home. They've owned it for generations, this family, extended family, and no one lives here permanently. So the rooms would be empty most of the time. And at that time, actually, it started because I needed a place to keep my bicycle, like just a place to store my bike while I went to Malaysia when my visa expired here. And then they said, oh, you can just, leave your bicycle here. So I brought my bike up and I left it here. And at that time, the whole situation became more clear to me. So it's like, like this house and a very beautiful village on the slopes of a volcano, a farming community, very interesting place. So when I came back from Malaysia to be reunited with my bicycle, instead of just getting on my bike and riding away, I ended up staying here for a time and kind of basing myself here. And that's how this all came about. But as I found out yesterday, more about this later, the family that owns this house is quite large. Many brothers and sisters on both sides of the family, and lots of family members. I mean, a lot of them live in Java, the island of Java. They're spread out across Indonesia, some in Bukit Tinggi, some in Pekanbaru, Padang, all these different cities. And when they have a couple days off, they'll come up here and spend the weekend in the village, get out of the big city, hang out here, meet friends and family, and enjoy the quiet up here on the volcano. So that's what happened in this case when one of the family members decided to come up here and spend a couple of nights here. And I think they only spent one night. Yeah, it was really just one night. And just because it was New Year and all the kids had a day off from school, the father, and didn't have to go to work. He had a day off from work, so they decided to. It was like in Canada, going to the cottage. We have in Canada, it's quite common for people to have a house in the city, and then they own a cottage to the north in more of a, a forested area, beautiful natural area. And on the weekend, they'll pack up the car and drive up to the cottage. And that's what they do here with this house. So, this family lives in Bukitingi, as I found out. And then they got in their, they packed up the van, packed up the kids, and then they drove up here and spent the night in the village. So that was very interesting. And that kind of fed into the day that I had yesterday. And yeah, I'll tell the story of yesterday. It was quite an interesting one. So some of the family members that are connected to this house, they actually live in the village, but they have another house over there. And the last time I was here, I met them. I met them towards the end of my stay, and I was down at the market in Bukitingi. I was shopping for a stick to mount my GoPro on the bicycle. So I was in the market trying to get a really solid, lightweight, like an axe handle or something. So I'm in the market shopping, and a guy came up to me and said, "Oh, are you?" Walked up to me and said, "Are you Douglas?" And I said, "Well, yes, I am." And he introduced himself to me, and this was a young man named Cati. No, Chat. I constantly get his name wrong because he spells it C-A-T-I, but the C at the beginning is a C-H sound, so his name is Cati. So this was Cati, and he was a member of this family that lives here in the village, and he knew all about me. Everyone in the family knows who I am, and I'm here and what I'm doing here, and they've been, they can watch videos of mine on YouTube, so they know a lot about me. But for some reason, all the time that I've been staying here before, I never met them. So I never met that family. I didn't really know who they were or their connection to this house, and I hadn't met Cati before. And he speaks English, so that was really good. And then when I came back to Sumatra this time, Cati offered to pick me up when I arrived and drive me up to the village. So I've been in touch with him, and we're connected on WhatsApp. And because yesterday was a holiday, Cati and I were talking about doing something together. I really enjoy spending time with him, partially because he speaks English and he can explain things to me, like what is going on, like what is that building, and what are they growing here, and questions about the village, because normally I walk around looking at things and I have no idea what's going on. So he could be kind of a guide for me, and then he gets to hang out with me and practice his English, basically. So we were wondering, talking about something we could do today, and I suggested, well, if you don't mind being on YouTube, what do you think if you and I get together and, I have a special Rode microphone where I can have a microphone on me, but I have a second one I could put on him, and then he and I could go for a walk around the village, and then I could just ask him questions. We could just talk. And I could ask him, all these questions I have, and he was willing to do that. So we arranged a time. I was going to go to his house at 8 o'clock in the morning. He's an early riser. And then he and I were just going to take it from there. I had a rough idea of places I wanted to go. This village is quite small, but I pictured, okay, we could walk down this road and then here and go here and up here. And there were a couple of things I wanted to walk by and I wanted to ask him about. And I thought maybe there's a little shop here where I used to go, where I would get a morning coffee and some snacks. But since I've been back, it hasn't been open. So we weren't able to go there, I don't think. So I had this plan in mind. And it turns out there was a wrinkle to this whole thing, which ended up being quite interesting. The day that I rode my bike down to Bukitingi to go to Telkomsel, I passed Cati's house. And I was surprised to see that there were a lot of vehicles parked there. There's actually a big van, like a passenger van, and a lot of motorcycles, a lot of cars, a lot of people were there. and I heard an amplification system. So I could hear speaking voices coming over a loud speaker system. So something was going on there, and me being me, I mean, I naturally associated it with the end of the year. I mean, it was New Year's Eve, and I just assumed it was something to do with Islam, that there was a gathering there, and the imam had come to the house, and they were performing some kind of a ceremony, and lots of people had come to take part. That was my assumption. I didn't know, of course, and being a dummy and not speaking Indonesian, I didn't really know what was going on, but that's what I thought. And then when I came back up from Bukittinggi, I passed by the house again. It was late in the day, you know, late in the afternoon, and looks like that meeting was breaking up. And I noticed that they were all women, I think. There may have been a couple of men in there, but it was mainly women coming out of the house. There were big groups of women standing around, getting into cars, getting into the van, and it's like, oh, so all women there. So that was interesting. So I had this going on in my mind, and I was going to ask Cati about that. So that morning, I went down to Cati's house, and I went inside and had a cup of coffee with Cati, and it turned out that this meeting, whatever this was a 2-day event, because I saw that their living room, I'd been there before, I'd seen the interior of the house, and they had like a living room set of furniture. All of that had been cleared away, and there were still audio equipment, speakers and microphones and things like that. And Cati said, yeah, it was going on today as well. So I had a chance now to ask Cati, well, what is going on? I mean, what has been happening here? And it turned out to be something quite interesting. And I talk about it in the video that I shot that day a little bit. And I learned a great deal very quickly. But basically, this was a 2-day, not seminar, a 2-day conference, not even a conference. It was like a seminar or tutorial to train local women in how to run a small-scale bakery. So that has 2 parts. One is how to run a small business out of your home. Like if you have a bakery, of course, you're dealing with a small business, earning money and having customers and that sort of thing. But of course, you also have to know how to bake bread. So it was a 2-day event, and the first day was all about running a small business, you know, the technical side of having a bakery running out of your home. And then day 2 was all about making bread, you know, and the women were being taught how to do this. And why it was happening at Cati's house was interesting. Up until that point, I hadn't met his father. I didn't know anything about his father. I'd met Cati and I'd met his mother, but I think those were the only people I'd met from the family. But it turns out that Cati's father is an elected government official. Exactly what level of government or what his job is, I don't know. But because he works in the government, he was instrumental in putting together this seminar for the local women. And Cati's mother is an experienced baker. She knows how to bake bread and she knows how to run businesses, and she was the one running the seminar, as far as I could tell. So while I was there, Cati unrolled a big sign, like a banner that would have been on display out on the streets somewhere advertising this event. And it looked very typical to me, like you see all kinds of signs in Sumatra at the side of the road. There seemed to be a lot of elections, a lot of officials at various levels of government, and they're constantly putting up these large billboards of them standing there smiling and a slogan, you know, political slogan for their campaign. And this sign looked exactly like that, had 2 men on it, one very distinguished looking, you know, official looking man on one side and another very distinguished official looking man on the other side, and then a bunch of Indonesian and a couple of dates there. And it turns out that the man on the right side in this sign, in this huge banner, that was Cati's father, the government official. So he was instrumental in putting this whole thing together. And then the man on the other side was described to me as like the mayor of Agam Regency or Agam District or whatever it is called. So yeah, that was quite interesting, and so that cleared up the mystery of everything that was going on at their house that day. So I hung out there for a little while, but then the women started to arrive for the day's events, and that kind of goosed Cati and I to get organized and head out on our tour of Sarik or Sariak. And then that was a little bit interesting in terms of behind the scenes, because I wanted to be able to record my voice and his. So, my suggestion to him was, I asked him, would you mind? It feels like a very intrusive thing to do. Like, would you mind if I put this microphone on you? Because I have one here. And I says, well, can I put this one on you? Would you mind that? Otherwise, if we're walking around, you can't hear his voice. Even if he's right beside me, this microphone won't pick up his voice. So in the morning, I found a little cord, because I have this around my neck on a cord, so I cut another one to length. So there I am with Cati, basically miking him up. Like you see, movie sets, things like that. You got the director and the cinematographer and all these people. But then there's the sound department, and you see people running around frantically, going up to guests or actors, whoever they are, and putting microphones on them and running wires around them and fussing around them and doing that. And that's what now I was doing to Cati, so I'm taking this cord and putting it around his neck, and then I'm taking the microphone and clipping it on, and I put this little dead cat on there to muffle the sound. At first I suggested he could just put it under his shirt, like I always do, and then you don't need a wind muff. But Cati says, no, I'll just leave it on the outside. He didn't mind. And he was wearing a classic black rock and roll t-shirt, those like sort of like teenagers in high school always have. It's a black shirt with a big logo, and his was for AC/DC. He likes AC/DC. But because the whole shirt was like a black rock and roll t-shirt, the black of this kind of, you can't see it. It's not that clear. So it's okay to have this hanging on the outside. And then when he said that, he's like, oh, no, I'll just leave it on the outside. And then I says, oh, okay. Well, then I'll put this little wind muff on you. So now I'm going up to him, and I'm fussing around him like I'm some kind of a sound technician again. And these are not easy to get on. You really have to line them up properly. And then I have to turn it on and make sure that the blue lights are on and make sure it's connected. And then we have to do a sound check, check, 1, 2, 3. And I walk away from him, check, 1, 2, 3. And I play back the video. Okay, we have audio, we're working. But that whole scene, this was kind of the first time I'd done that with a civilian, I've done it with Daryl from Wander Eats, and I did it with Jamie, an American that I was spending some time with in KL. Another, he was a traveler, and I met him in KL, and we went to a mosque together, and, I would mic him up. And even when I was at the mosque doing a tour, I remember now, I put a microphone on the imam. I asked him if it was okay, because we were going to ask him questions. He was giving us a tour of the mosque, and I wanted to get his voice, so I put a microphone around him. But I hadn't done it very many times, and these were all, when I did it before, it was either with another Westerner like me or another YouTuber like Daryl. So it feels more normal, like it's no big deal. But with Cati, he's like just a normal person, and it feels kind of odd. Like, you're shooting a YouTube vlog. The whole idea is that it's very casual. You're just running around with a GoPro, and you're talking to people, film this, film that, film yourself, film them. But the problem is audio. It's really hard, I find, to get a microphone that's going to pick up the voices, your voice, and the voices of people around you. So here I was with this guy that, I'm just, he's a local guy, and I'm going to spend the day hiking, walking around the village with him. And yet it's like I'm my own sound department. I'm like a sound tech, and I'm fussing with him. And throughout the day, the way these microphones work, they're automated. It's not really designed to be a standalone microphone. They're designed to be backup recordings. So you don't have a lot of control over what they record. It's not like there's an off-on, like pause button or rewind or start recording, stop recording. It doesn't have any of those controls. The way it works is when you turn them on, and then you get these blue lights. You can see the two blue lights here. One means it's powered up. The other blue light means it's connected to the receiver. So when you turn it on with the power button and the blue lights come on, it starts recording. And it will record forever, hours and hours and hours, until you turn it off. So basically, powering it on and powering it off starts and stops recording. So throughout the day, I mean, I was hanging out with Cati for quite a while. We spent many hours together. And I don't want one 7-hour file. Like if I just leave it running all day for 7 hours, I will end up with one 7-hour audio file. And that's a bit risky because you're going to lose everything. If you need that, you're going to lose it all. So what I like to do is like every hour or so, start and stop. Like you turn the mic off and it stops recording, saves that file as a 1-hour chunk, and then you turn it back on again, and now it starts recording in a new file. And I would do that periodically throughout the day. So even though I'm just hanging out with Cati and trying to have this sort of casual YouTube attitude, this YouTube atmosphere, every once in a while I had to turn on my technician hat and say, oh, do you mind if I walk up to him and I'm fiddling around with the microphone and I'm explaining to him what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and I turn it off and I turn it back on and things like that. So that was kind of unusual. And it also leads to some complexity in the editing. I already started editing this video yesterday. And if you have two microphones recording at the same time going into the GoPro, what it does is, with the settings I use, this microphone, the audio signal is recorded onto the left channel. So the left channel is 100% this microphone. And this one that I had on Cati, it goes to the right channel. So they're not mixed, they're split. This is kept entirely separate from this, and it's recorded on the GoPro on two totally separate channels, which is good and bad. It's bad. It's good because now you can control both audio signals separately. And I think you really have to do that because, for example, we're out there wandering around and recording because I'm having a conversation with Cati, oh, Cati, I have a question about the mosque. Can you tell me about the architecture? And he answers, and I want to record that. But there will be times where he's going to go off on his own. We're not together for a few minutes, maybe extreme example. I have to go to the bathroom, and then Cati goes off to the bathroom. And if I don't think about that and say, oh, let me turn off your microphone first, it records everything he's doing. So even if he's off somewhere having a private conversation, it's still recording. And then if the audio signal from this microphone and this microphone are mixed, they're merged, then I can't separate them. Basically, I have no choice. If I'm trying to record my own, if I want to include my own voice in the video, suddenly I have his voice at the same time. But he's off having another conversation that isn't part of what I'm saying. They overlap, right? So what you have to do is split them. One goes to the left channel, one goes to the right. So then I have control. So if I'm only speaking and he's off having a private conversation, then in the audio track, I can cut his out. I can mute it. So I have control over both audio signals. So that's good. But it's bad because it makes it much more complicated. I was doing this yesterday, and it turns out it's a 5-step process. So for every video clip, so I've imported one video clip from the GoPro into my editing program. Then I end up with a video track and an audio track. So it gets very technical, but there's one audio track, but it's made up of a left and right channel. So even though the microphones have been split to left and right channel, they're still on the same audio track. So what I have to do, stage one, I have to unlink the video and the audio tracks so they're not connected anymore. Step two, I have to take that audio track and copy it, duplicate it, so now I have two audio tracks that are identical. Then step three, I have to take audio track number one, go into the properties and set it to the embedded channel 1 and embedded channel 1. So basically the audio signal is going, the one audio signal is going to both the left and right channels on that one track. Then I go to track number 2, go into the properties, and I have to set that one so that that audio signal goes to the left and right channels on track number 2. So now they are 100% separate. Once I've done that, step 5, I have to select all three, the video and the two audio tracks, and link them back together so that when I edit them as a single unit. Takes a while. And technically, you don't have to go through all those steps because, as I said, with these two microphones, I could merge the signal. The way the Rode system works, you plug these into your computer and you open up an app, the Rode Central app, and then you can go into all the settings on these and you can choose either split or merged, as I talked about before. And I use split so that the two audio signals are split to left and right channels, but I could do merged and then they all end up basically mixed together, and then you wouldn't have to go through this long process of separating them and assigning them to the left and right in different tracks and all that kind of stuff. And that could be very useful, but you could only do that if you know absolutely you never want to edit the two audio tracks separately, or the two audio sources, separately. If and then you set it to merge, and they go together, and then you never have to worry about any of this. But yeah, split works much better for me. Of course, that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of technical problems, because the main job, it's not a job, but the main activity is really just talking. So now Cati and I are heading out into the village, and what I'm doing, of course, is I have I don't have it on there now, but I've got my grip and I've got my GoPro here and the microphone there, and then I have all the camera settings to worry about. I have to set the right width, because normally I use linear because I'm just holding it and I'm recording myself or what's, in front of me, and it doesn't have to be super wide. Like in a GoPro, even linear is very wide. But now I'm going to be walking along and I want to have me and Cati in the video, and it turns out a third person joined us, so there were 3 of us walking side by side. So I need a much wider field of view, so I have to make sure in the GoPro I choose wide setting, something like that. And then of course there's exposure settings and this and that and all the mounting systems of the GoPro, and I'm monitoring Cati's microphone, and I'm monitoring my own as well, and memory cards and changing batteries in the GoPro. You have to do that all day. And I'm still fiddling around with my where is it? My media mod, changing batteries, changing memory cards. It's such a complex process, and my media mod is broken, so I have to fiddle around with that using elastic bands, and more about that in a minute maybe. So all this is going on, and this is the first time I've ever done this, and it is so easy to make a mistake. It's just, well, like I said, what I was trying to say at the very beginning, that in my mind, my main activity is actually talking, because what I'm doing is walking around with Cati and asking him questions about his life, about his family, about the Minangkabau people that live here, the Minganese, which is the Minangkabau language I learned, the history of this house, the history of the Rumah Gadang, which was like the centerpiece of our day yesterday, exploring the traditional Rumah Gadang, this massive 15-room communal structure that's just across the street there, built back in the 1800s. And so that's what I'm thinking about. That's what I'm concentrating on. And yet I'm also my own sound department and my own cinematography department. You know, it's a lot, and it's inevitable that you make a mistake. And as I was editing the video files, I was just like assembling them and doing sort of a rough cut, a rough edit. I realized that for some reason, I still haven't been able to figure out what happened. My microphone was turned off, completely off. For a long segment of time while we were walking and having a conversation, I got no audio at all from my microphone. The only microphone working was the one on Cati. And for the life of me, I mean, for that to happen, I must have turned mine off. Because I probably did it, like I talked about with Chati's microphone. Periodically, I would turn his off, wait for a beat, and turn it back on again, just to kickstart saving audio into a new file, you know, just to put it into chunks rather than one huge file. And I'm assuming I did the same thing with mine, and then I must have turned it off and then never turned it on again. So luck, in a way, it kind of saved me that the GoPro battery dies so quickly, because I was just wandering along, happily chatting with Cati. And then the battery died in the GoPro, so I found a place to sit down on some steps, and I disassembled the GoPro and changing the battery and everything. And then every time you do that, you have to run through another set of tests. Like whenever you put in a new battery to the GoPro, you can't just hit record and go. That would be a disaster, because every time you turn the GoPro off and put a new battery in, all kinds of things could have gone wrong. Mainly, the microphone may not have connected. So you have to do an audio test every single time you put in a new battery. You know, I test my microphone, I test Chati's, you know, test, check, 1, 2, 3, and then replay the video and see, you know, the audio. And then I did that, you know, I changed the battery, and I'm going check, you know, testing 1, 2, 3, and I was getting no sound. And I looked down, and there were no blue lights. My microphone was off, and I thought, oh no, like, how long has it been off? Like, am I so dumb that from like the entire day, I've gone through the entire day, I did all this work, all this preparation, all this thinking, all this planning, and in the end, I didn't get any audio from my microphone, like my voice? It's like, no, don't tell me that. But it turned out it wasn't that bad. It was just this middle chunk where, for whatever reason, my microphone was off. And then once I discovered the problem, yeah, then I turned it back on, and for the rest of the day, it worked. And luckily, I was kind of able to fix the problem, because sometimes Cati was right beside me. So even though my microphone wasn't picking up my voice, you could still hear me on his microphone. We were close together, and we were just walking through the countryside. So there was very little noise. So my voice was still being picked up. It was really, really quiet, but it was still there. So I had to go through all those video clips and then carve it up into chunks. And every part where I was speaking, I had to cut that and then raise the levels. And so you could hear me. I mean, no professional would ever do that, because as you're watching the video now, you can hear it. It's like the background noise. Like when you raise, you know, the volume drastically, it raises my voice, but it also raises all the background hiss or hum, whatever it is. So you can hear it while Chati's speaking, you know, a certain amount of hum, you know, like, then you get to me, you know, the tone of the audio changes completely, and any professional would just be horrified at that. But all I care about is whether you can hear my question and then hear Chati's answer. So I raised my voice just so you could hear it. And there was a period in there where we were just chatting about normal stuff, like YouTubers, for example. And I had no intention of including that in the video anyway, because it turns out they know a lot. I say they because there are two of them, and I'll get back to that in a minute once I finish this technology update, this technology summary. They know about Dale Phillip, for example. You know, he's very famous in Indonesia, apparently, because he's traveled all around Indonesia, shot a lot of videos here, and they know all about Dale Phillip. And so I was asking them about Dale Phillip, and when they watch his videos, what do they like about them, and how do they feel about him as a person, and his tone, and how he shoots videos, and his experiences. And so we're talking about all these YouTubers, and I had no intention of putting that in the final video anyway. And most of that was all about, that was at the time when my microphone was turned off, so that wasn't a problem. The biggest problem was there was a section there I was asking them about the hunting dogs, because they do a lot of hunting here, and they have a special larger type of dog here that they use for hunting wild pigs. And I was asking Cati questions about that, and that whole section was when my microphone wasn't working. And there's more, actually. There's another section where we walk down to a mosque with a big water reservoir, and that whole section, my microphone also was not working. But I haven't finished editing that portion yet, so I don't know how bad that is. That's the first thing I'm going to do today once I finish with my behind the scenes video. So yeah, boy, it's a complicated business the first time you do anything. So I'm still working on that video, and speaking of video and behind the scenes technology stuff, it's kind of one thing that's going on is I finished editing and exporting the video about flying to Sumatra, and today I'm going to finish editing the video that I shot yesterday, and I finished exporting and editing 3 or 4 behind the scenes videos. So I have all these videos, but of course here in the village I have no Wi-Fi, so I can't upload anything. So I'm trying to figure out how to deal with that. It's an issue. I am, as I said, I have my phone working again, so I do have access to mobile internet, but you can't upload YouTube videos over mobile. I did that last time I was here, and there's an odd mathematics to that because you have to buy data, and one of these videos can be between 20 and 30 gigabytes. The GoPro produces huge files for some reason, and then the final exported video file, even at 1080p, I don't shoot in 4K because there's no way. Even 1080p files are just massive. Like I said, 20 gigabytes kind of at a minimum, depending on the length of the video. It can be 13 gigabytes, 20, 30. They're huge. And by the time you finish uploading and paying for mobile data, you've paid more than a hotel room. So it costs you more in mobile data than if you just went to a hotel and stayed for the night in a hotel and used their Wi-Fi, right? So it makes no sense to use mobile data. I figured that out. So I'm thinking what I might end up doing is, like I'm still here in the village, staying in this house. What I might do is just pack up my laptop and my smartphones, like don't even worry about camera gear or anything, and just ride into town and book a hotel room for 1 night, 2 nights. I don't know how long it would take, but 1 night to start, and then check in as early as possible, and then just spend the entire day and night uploading videos, using their Wi-Fi to upload to YouTube. And then when that's done, I can come back here. But yeah, when you're cut off from Wi-Fi, it makes life difficult. So yeah, as I said, you can't really use mobile data because it's more expensive than staying in a budget hotel and just use their Wi-Fi. But that's a little bit risky too, because you never know. You might check into a hotel and that day, for whatever reason, their Wi-Fi is down, or you have a slow connection. I mean, it's a constant struggle in dealing with that sort of thing. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that when I went out on this walk around Sariak, I went with Cati and another person. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, who this mysterious third person was. It was really quite interesting. I mentioned that, I was setting all this up with Cati the day before. That was the New Year's Eve day. And we made these arrangements to go on our little tour the next day, like on the first day of the year. And then that was the night that the family showed up here. And I didn't meet this family until the next morning when, as I said, I went to the bathroom to take my ice cold, bucket bath shower. And to my surprise, some people came out of the bathroom. I was like, oh, hi. They were a surprise. And then later on, I was talking with the father. I was pleased to find out that he spoke English. And then while I was chatting with him, he called over his son, high school age. He's in high school, his son, and called him over and kind of urged him to, talk to the foreigner, use your English, talk to the foreigner. And that's always kind of funny. Parents do that everywhere I go, and it usually horrifies the children because the parents are very proud of their kids, want to hear them speak English to demonstrate what they learn in school. And then when I show up as a foreigner and they understand, oh, you're from Canada, you speak English, and they push their children forward, okay, talk, speak English. And of course, his poor son had pretty much just woken up, and he was still, not thinking clearly yet, and he was in a bit of a daze, and he didn't say much that first time. And I thought maybe he was just too shy or he couldn't speak English. But then, the morning progressed a little bit and everybody had showered and had something to eat and more awake. And then I met his son, this high school student, and his English was incredible. He spoke English very well. And I found out a lot about this family. Again, they're connected to this whole extended family that owns this house. And I promised to talk about that a little bit. In particular, what I found out speaking with Cati, that on his mother's side of the family, like his mother has, if I've got this right, 10 brothers and 8 sisters. So we're talking about 18 or 19 children just on his mother's side. So he has that many aunts and uncles just on his mother's side. And on his father's side, it's exactly the same. His father has 10 brothers and 8 sisters, I think. So it's like, as many as 18 or 19 siblings on that side. So Cati himself has 38 aunts and uncles. And each of them, of course, most of them, if not all of them, have gotten married and had their own families. So you can only imagine the size of this family. It's just, wow. And as I mentioned in the video, I was kind of happy to learn that because I often feel like a real dummy when it comes to family relationships. I meet people and they tell me, oh, that's my mother's aunt's cousin's brother and we're related. And I can't keep track of the family relationships and I end up not knowing anything. I don't know who's who. I don't know who's related to who, how they're related. I just can't get that information into my brain. But then when you're talking about a family this big, okay, then I have an excuse for not being able to keep things straight, right? So anyway, all these different family members, and I learned about this particular uncle, member of the family, and the family that was staying here, they lived in Jakarta most of the time. Most of their lives, they lived in Jakarta. And that was mentioned to me as explaining why his son could speak English so well. I guess being from Jakarta kind of means that if you're from Jakarta, there's a greater chance that you speak better English, just because English is more commonly spoken in Jakarta than, say, in the countryside of Sumatra. So yeah, they're from Jakarta, and because of that, and because of, I guess, an affinity for languages and being extremely intelligent, as I found out this high school student was very intelligent, he spoke English very well. And with my background of being an English teacher and English editor, I have an ear for grammatical structures. When people speak, I listen to them and I hear if I, the proper verb tenses and things like that. When I hear it, it's like, wow, he's using the right verb tenses, quite complex tenses, to convey different meanings to do with the past and the future. And I was like, wow, nice. Couldn't believe it. Anyway, as I found out later in the day, his name was Fauzan. He spelled it for me. I have it here. Fauzan. Fauzan. So his name was Fauzan. And at the beginning, we didn't have any plan for him to come with us. It was still just me and Cati. But then when Cati and I started on our walk, we were walking up the road, and then this family came down the road in their van. I guess they were going somewhere. I'm not quite sure where they're going, probably to the house where they're having the baking seminar, because they're family as well, and they're going to meet with them. So they stopped to talk with us, and Fauzan was in the van in the front seat, and then he said to his father, it's like, oh, yeah, do you think I can go with them? It turns out he has an interest in YouTube. So he was interested in my camera and microphones and my YouTube channel and projects. And of course, he spoke English quite well. And he said to his father, like, can I go with them? So he got permission to do that. And he hopped out of the van and he joined us. So now it had me and Cati and Fauzan. And oddly enough, or interestingly enough, despite being members of the same family, Cati and Fauzan had never met before. This was the first time that they had met. And that was because Fauzan's family had, grown up in Jakarta, and they had moved to Bukit Tinggi just 1 month ago. So that confused me as well. I was talking to them and I asked them, where are you from? Because I was curious. They had driven in their van to come here to the village to stay in this house. And so I was kind of trying to figure out where they had come from, and they said Jakarta. I thought, wow. I mean, you drove all the way from Jakarta to come here for like the New Year celebrations. Wow, that is a long, long trip. And then I asked them, how long are you going to stay? And they were saying like 1 night. Yeah, just 1 night. We're leaving tomorrow afternoon. I thought, what? Like, you're going to drive all the way from Jakarta to here to spend 1 night and drive that? Wow, okay, that's interesting. I don't know why you would do that. But it turns out that wasn't the case at all. They had lived in Jakarta, but 1 month ago they picked up and moved, and they were now living in Bukit Tinggi. So in fact, they had only driven up from Bukit Tinggi to here, 15-minute drive, and spend the night, and then they're going to drive back the next day. So that all made more sense. But it takes me forever to figure out all these details, especially family relationships and things. But anyway, yeah, Fauzan hopped out of the van and he joined us. And then the three of us spent, the rest of the day together. And we did the tour of the village, talked about all kinds of things. And then later in the day, I think it was Fauzan, he asked me whether I'd had this certain type of coffee. And it took me a long, long time to figure out what they were talking about. But it turns out they have a special type of coffee here. It's called, there's an Indonesian or a Minangkabau name for it. But I don't know what that is. But in English, I guess you would call it an upside down coffee, where the coffee is in a cup, but they put a dish on top of the cup. Like the coffee grounds are in with the hot water, but then they turn it upside down. So the coffee is inside the cup as it's resting on the saucer. And then you slowly lift the edge of the cup to let some of the coffee leak out into the saucer. And then you can drink it from the saucer, or you use a straw and you drink it. And I shot a whole video about that. It's going to be a second video, like a separate video. So the two of us hopped into their family Suzuki, Suzuki 4-wheel drive off-roader. And Cati drove us to this special coffee shop out in the rice fields. And we each had, upside down coffee. And then we kept talking. And it really did blew my mind how intelligent these two guys were and the things they were thinking about. Yeah, I mean, our conversation was so wide-ranging. We're talking about Russia and Ukraine and the U.S. and their invasion of Iraq years ago. We're talking about the Cold War. We're talking about the new movie Oppenheimer and nuclear weapons and nuclear technology and the discovery of this, how that all works. We're talking about the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis, and on and on and on. The range of knowledge that these two high school students had was astonishing. If you spoke to me when I was in high school in Canada, I mean, I knew a little bit about a few things, I enjoyed biology and this and that, but I would have had no clue what the Cuban Missile Crisis was, the Bay of Pigs invasion. I was a dummy back in high school. I guess I'm still a dummy today, but man, these kids, they were up on their current events, history, technology. There wasn't a single topic that I could introduce that they didn't know about and didn't have opinions about, and they were doing all of this in English. Really amazing. Smart kids. I was very impressed with that. Yeah. So that was a very interesting day, and I'm hoping that there are no more big problems with the video I shot about yesterday. I hope it all comes together and makes kind of an interesting video. But it was all brand new technology, even holding the camera, to have 3 people in frame, using 2 microphones, all of this was pretty complex for me. So I'm not sure how it's all going to come together. But yeah, it should be interesting. Yeah, a little bit more of a technology update, I suppose. Kind of a funny story. I mentioned several times that my media mod is broken. And that's because the latch on the door was broken. And I developed this system where I took a piece of metal that was part of the media mod, and I turned it around and screwed it back into place so that it's sticking out over the edge. And then I would take a rubber band and wrap a rubber band around that piece of metal, and then wrap it around the GoPro finger mount, the thumb screws and everything to hold it in place. But that wasn't working out very well because the rubber bands wouldn't stay in place. And I don't know if I told this story or not, but I was on the airplane flying here, and I had to change the battery in the GoPro, and then so I had to take the rubber band off, and I lost control of it, and the band just went bing, went flying through the air, and then landed on the shoulder of the woman in front of me, and I could just see, like between the 2 seats, I could see her shoulder, and I could see the rubber band on her shoulder, and I really wanted that rubber band. And I was like, I was thinking like I could get my 2 fingers like between the 2 seats, and maybe I could get that rubber band. But of course, that would, if I accidentally touched her, she could feel my fingers on her shoulder. I'd scare the life out of her. So I thought, oh no, oh well, that's that. I'm gonna have to get another rubber band, right? So I was thinking ahead to how I can fix this rubber band problem, and I was waiting until I got here, because once I got back here and was reunited with my gear, I would have my bicycle tools, and I have a Leatherman in particular, pair of needle nose pliers built into the Leatherman. And my plan was to take this piece of metal, instead of having it stick out flat, I was going to bend it, like put an elbow joint into it, and then the rubber band would have, like a corner, an elbow to dig into, and it wouldn't come off so easily. But as anyone who's done this sort of work knows, that can be very tricky, because this metal is very strong. It's thin, but it's a very stiff, strong piece of steel. But it is screwed into plastic. So if I grab hold of it and just try to bend it, it will break the plastic. It'll tear the screws right out of the plastic before the metal bends. So I was trying to be very careful, trying to be very methodical about how I did this. I thought it through and tried to think of different ways I could do it. To be honest, the best way would have been to remove it, like to unscrew the screws, take the metal out, and then bend it separately and then screw it back in. But I'd had such a difficult time putting the screws in to begin with. They're like microscopic screws, and just getting them lined up and into the holes was almost impossible. So I didn't want to go through that again. It took a long time to get that done. So I wanted to leave it in place, and I came up with this idea. I've got this little screwdriver, and I was going to hold the metal in place and then like that, and then grab the end of the metal and kind of wrap it around the screwdriver to sort of, I would have something to brace the metal against, and hopefully the screwdriver would take all the force and I wouldn't tear it out of the plastic. So that was kind of my idea. And it was risky. There was a chance I was just going to tear this whole thing to pieces, but you know, I did it very, very carefully. I grabbed just the tip and just bent it little by little by little by little and tried to keep the pressure as low as I could. So I do all that, and then I realized, once again, dummy, because when I rode my bike into Bukitingi to go to Telkomsel, you know, I had to get my bike back in shape, right? I had to, you know, clean it up and oil the chain and tighten things and work on it a little bit. And then I had to make sure that I had my toolkit with me. Like everywhere you go, you have to have a tire patch kit. I have a basic portable toolkit that goes with me on the bike everywhere I go. And I'm fiddling around with that kit, and I felt something heavy inside it. And I thought, what? I completely forgot. Last time I was in Malaysia, I bought mini vice grips. Beautiful thing. I find them to be much more useful, to be honest, than the Leatherman needle nose pliers. So I completely forgot that I had this tool. So had I remembered, I could have used this and this in combination to bend that piece of metal, you know. And it's like, oh, for Pete's sake. I go to all this trouble in Kuala Lumpur to buy one of these. I find a mini kind of lightweight mini vice grips, and they're so exciting, and I use them constantly, and it's like one of the most amazing things I ever bought in my life. And yet, when I go to work on something to do a little repair, I forgot that I even owned them, and I do the entire thing with Leatherman and a screwdriver, totally forgetting that I even had this in my bag. So ridiculous. But anyway, I love these. Yeah, I don't even know if I need this anymore, to be honest. They kind of duplicate each other, and this one is quite heavy. This is actually lighter than the Leatherman. I find this to be more useful. But there are cases where this is, because this also has other tools in it, you know, like a file and a serrated blade. I mean, this is like the sharpest knife in the universe. That is so sharp, and I often need that. So they serve different functions, these two tools. But I wish I'd remembered I had two tools before I started this repair job. And this is kind of working now. It's horrible, but you have such a sophisticated piece of technology, and then you hold it together with a rubber band. On the face of it, that's ludicrous, but it works, more or less. In terms of a YouTube update, very briefly, since I got back online, I can't really use mobile internet to upload videos, and I can't really use it to watch YouTube videos either, because that consumes a lot of data. But I thought I would, I have some data on here, and so I just watched a little bit of YouTube videos, and I watched not the latest video, because there's been one more since then, but at the time it was the latest video from Itchy Boots, and I enjoyed that very much because she was in the middle of the Liberian jungle in West Africa on her motorbike, and she's trying to get to the border with the Ivory Coast, but it is the rainy season, so I can relate to that. The rainy season here is raining all last night too. And the roads are muddy. And I knew she was going to have trouble with her motorbike if she tried to go down these back roads, to get through that mud. It's just notoriously difficult in that part of Africa. So I wanted to watch that video. And of course, she got stuck in the mud. And there was one point, really bad situation where a large truck of some kind, or a bus, I think it was a truck, got stuck in the mud. And of course, now it's blocking the road, and nobody can get past it. So then they cut a second small little detour road to go around the truck. And it goes up a steep little hill and then around. And that hill had gotten very, very muddy. So anyway, Itchy Boots got up to this point, and there were a bunch of men on motorcycles ahead of her. They came to a stop, and then she turned off her motorbike and was sort of like wondering what's going on, and asked them, like, what can we get through? And these men told her, no, you can't, but we have a detour, you can go this way. So Itchy Boots said, oh, okay, I'll go this way. And I think because she had an audience, people were, this is my guess, she didn't say this in the video, but she fell. She was trying to get through the mud. She was on kind of a steep, angled part of the road, and she actually went over. And she had the GoPro running at the time, like I think a GoPro Mini at the front of her bike. And so she got video of her falling over, and because of the mud and the whole situation, she was trapped, a little bit trapped under the motorcycle. Her left leg, her foot, was caught, and the motorcycle fell right on top of it. So she was struggling to get herself free. So it looked pretty bad. It looked like a bad fall. And I was wondering whether she fell like that because it was such an unusual situation, and these people were kind of telling her to go this way, and everybody was watching, and maybe she was a little bit self-conscious, and on her own she would have navigated that okay. But because of the unusual circumstances, she lost control of the motorbike and went over. And then the men on the other motorbikes, they all came running to help. She's got a very heavy motorcycle with all her gear, and they all kind of, picked up the motorbike, got it off her leg, and then she could help as well, and they got the motorbike back up. And then something very interesting happened, which I can relate to so much, and I've seen similar circumstances in her previous videos when she was motorcycling through South America, where one of the men wants to help her, and then, they all want to help her, but he took it upon himself. He says, okay, I will help you. And he just hopped on her motorcycle. He got on, and then he started the motorbike. He didn't know how to start it at first because the starter wouldn't work. And he's like, oh, how? And then Itchy Boots, turned the key in the ignition, and then this guy started the motorbike, and he was going to drive her motorcycle through the mud for her to help her. But of course, deep down, I'm sure Itchy Boots was like, no, like she did not want someone else driving her motorbike because it was also having mechanical problems. She was babying the engine as much as she could. She didn't really want to, just go crazy with it. So now she's got a complete stranger, a man she's never met in her lifetime until this moment, in the middle of the, Sierra Leone jungle in the mud, and this guy is now, revving the engine and trying to get through the mud. So she's got two concerns. One, of course, is security. This guy could get to the end of the main muddy patch and then just take off with her motorbike. She doesn't know. The guy could steal her entire motorbike, and she would have been helpless to stop him. So yeah, you don't want a stranger riding away on your motorbike that's fully loaded with all your possessions in the world. Nobody would want that. And of course, Itchy Boots is there with her helmet on, with all her full riding gear, her riding boots, and she's trying to keep up with this guy to kind of help push the motorbike a little bit. But I mean, she doesn't want to be stumbling through the mud in her helmet and her riding. She wants to be the one on the motorbike. And so there's the security concern, but there's also this guy not knowing that her motorbike is having engine problems, and he's going to, really rev it hard and could damage the engine, damage the clutch, damage something. So the whole thing is kind of crazy. And I've encountered similar things in my life where I was riding my bike, touring bicycle, and I had pannier bags on it and whatnot. And there were times when I might want to put it on a train, on a bus, on a truck, or something like that. And then there will be men around, and it's their job to load things onto the roof of the bus, and they want to help. They want to grab all your luggage and your bike and help it, and help put it on the top or put it onto the boat. That happened quite often. You want to put it onto a small boat. So basically, you lose control of your own destiny because these people are helping you, which is nice, but then they end up taking over and they do things in ways that you don't want, and they always end up doing it wrong. Like they'll damage my bike, they'll just sort of bang it around and crash it and bend things and twist things, and they manhandle it. They're very, very rough with it. They're not as careful with it as I would be. I want to do it myself. You know, I want to put it on the boat, and I want to go slowly. I want to think things through exactly, keep track of all my bags. But once people start helping you, you just lose all control and just chaos, and they end up often hurting you much more than helping you. And Itchy Boots was in that situation. I thought in South America there were times when she's putting her motorbike onto these boats, you know, to get across water. And of course she can't really do it herself. So all these, you know, men gather around and they're picking up her motorbike and then putting it onto boats and roping it into place. And this all happens so fast, you lose control of things, and then they may end up doing it in an unsafe way. And she wants to get in there and no, don't do that. No. And she wants to take over and do it properly in a way that she thinks is better and safer. But it's hard to get in there when you don't speak the language as well, and people are helping you. It's hard to, and that's what happened in this case, where the guy was just like, oh, I will help, hops on the motorbike, and suddenly he's going. And I could just mentally, I could hear Itchy Boots screaming inside her head, you know, like, oh, no. She wanted to stop him, I'm sure, but it would be rude to like just, you know, get off my motorcycle, you know, don't, you know. She wanted to be polite. She's a very friendly, polite person. And yeah, she just sort of let the situation unfold, and she tried to push the motorbike from behind and let this guy do what he was doing. And that's kind of where the video ended. And I just noticed there's a new video she just posted that gives the conclusion to that story, and it doesn't look good. Anyway, so I'm going to watch that video this morning. I want to find out how, because at the very end of the last video, she did stop it. She'd had enough because she was helping push other motorcycles through the mud. And these were small local motorbikes, and it was almost impossible to get them through the mud. You know, it was so difficult. And her motorbike is much bigger and heavier. So I think in her mind, she's thinking, man, this is a disaster. How am I going to get this motorbike? And she didn't want that guy, you know, revving that engine anymore. So she finally, she was helping push other motorbikes out, and then she walked back to her motorbike, and she made sure to walk in front of her motorcycle and just say, no, stop. And I think she was going to try and assert herself, but I am curious whether she did, in fact, manage to take over again and ride the motorbike herself, because there's some hint in her video title. I think it's called, I think I wrote down the name of it. The video is called "This Broke My Motorcycle, Insane Road Conditions." So I don't quite trust it. She does do a lot of clickbait. So broke my motorcycle. I don't really believe that her motorcycle is actually broken. She's probably still able to drive it away, but we'll see. Maybe it really is broken way out in the middle of the jungle, and she's unable to fix it, but I doubt it, because that would be very serious. But she does say, broke my motorcycle, but we'll see what that means. Maybe it just couldn't start for a while, and then she was able to get it started. That's what I suspect happened. But anyway, I'm interested to watch that video. And the other day, I came across a new travel vlogger that I've kind of taken an interest in. I can't say much about him because I didn't do a deep dive into his channel, but his channel is called, I think, Nick K. So his name is Nick, and I guess his last name starts with the letter K, so it's Nick K. And he's got an interesting YouTube history because he was living in Japan, teaching English, I think like kindergarten level. He's an American, age, I don't know, late 20s, mid 30s, you know. He was working and living in Japan for 10 years. So like even if he went to Japan in his early 20s, now when he left Japan and started traveling, he would have been in his early 30s, so he could be mid 30s by now. But yeah, I saw a picture of him when he first went to Japan, and yeah, and you see the difference. You know, very young and fresh-faced. He had no beard, and now he looks much older, and he has a big bushy beard and stuff. So yeah, he's probably early to mid-30s now. Nick K. And then when he was in Japan, he was shooting videos, so YouTube videos. He's been doing it for 4 years total, I guess. And all his videos in Japan had like very relatively low view numbers, like below 1,000, you know, 400 views, 300, 600, you know, kind of in that range. And then he started traveling, and I don't really know his travel history. I'd have to look up his channel. But I noticed that when he got to Indonesia, suddenly his views went up. So he went from like 1,000 views maximum. Now he was getting 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 views per video. And he was traveling all over Indonesia. Again, I haven't watched all those videos. I may or may not, I don't know. But yeah, suddenly in Indonesia, his videos became very, very popular. I assume with a local audience. So when I was walking around yesterday with Cati and Fauzan, I asked them, you know, oh, now you know Dale Phillip, but I just discovered this new guy, Nick K, and he's been, you know, traveling all over Indonesia. Do you know his videos? But they don't. And actually, oh, now I remember, I found out about Nick K because a friend of mine in Taiwan sent me a link because Nick K is currently riding a bicycle around Taiwan. He wasn't cycling before, like when he was traveling in Indonesia, he was doing it by bus and train and boat, you know, the normal public transport. But now, I guess his girlfriend is a cyclist. I don't know anything about his girlfriend yet. She could be Japanese. She doesn't seem to be in the videos at all. She's sort of there time to time. You see her, but she doesn't. So far, she hasn't spoken, and I don't know any of her history. I don't know when they met or how long they've traveled together. But she was doing a bike tour. The two of them were planning on doing a bike tour of Taiwan together, but then Nick K's mother became ill, had to undergo surgery, and he went back to the United States. So she went to Taiwan by herself, but now Nick K has returned, and they were in Malaysia, actually. They were in Johor. Maybe she's Malaysian. Maybe, I don't know. And then the two of them were in Johor, and then he said, well, why don't we go back to Taiwan, like the two of us now? Because he had his bike ready. They'd purchased a bike and pannier bags and camping gear. And she had already gone to Taiwan, but she loved it so much that he says, well, why don't you do it again? Why don't the two of us go to Taiwan, and then we can bike there together? I guess I enjoy his videos because he does talk about the logistics and the technology problems, because now the two of them were going to go to Taiwan together, but then she wasn't allowed to leave Malaysia, which makes me think she might be Malaysian, or she might have been a foreign worker in Malaysia, because they got to the airport and she had to, immigration asked her for a tax document. She had to deal with tax payments before they would let her leave the country. And then in the end, she wasn't able to get on the flight. So she had to remain behind, and Nick went to Taiwan by himself. So first they were planning to go there together, and Nick couldn't go, so she went alone. And now they're planning again to go together, and now she can't go, so he went alone. So, and I watched a couple of his videos from Taiwan. And I watched one other video of his, which I love these videos. He was in Indonesia, and he was in Bali, and he was going to fly from Bali to Sumatra. And so he was in Bali, got on, went to the airport, flew all the way. He took video of the whole trip. He got to his hotel in, I forget the name of the city, maybe Palembang. I think he went to Palembang in Sumatra, went to his hotel. He's doing the typical YouTube hotel room tour. Here's the bathroom, here's the bed, showing the room. And then he reached into his knapsack to unpack. And as he said in the video, he felt like sick. And I can just imagine it. He just felt sick to his stomach because his laptop was missing. It was just gone. And I know exactly what that feels like. The very first moment when it always goes in, there's like a side slit on his knapsack. That's where he puts the laptop. And the zipper goes down and you pull out the laptop. So he pulled the zipper down and there was no laptop. And you can just imagine his heart would be doing somersaults, butterflies. He would feel sick to his stomach. It's like panic, like instant panic. Where's my laptop? And then he starts thinking, oh, it's not, is it here? Is it in this pocket? Is it in my suitcase? Or I don't know if he has a backpack, I think. Is it in my backpack? And he's looking, and more and more he realizes that his laptop is gone. It's like, oh, and he just, like he said, felt sick to his stomach with the realization. And I won't tell the whole story because the video is all about trying to figure out what happened to his laptop. Where is it, and how can I get it back if possible? Has it been stolen? Did I drop it somewhere? Did I leave it on a bus? Like, where is my laptop? And the whole video is about that. And I felt so sorry for the guy because you just finished this flight from one end of the country to the other. You've navigated all these airports, all this public transportation. You finally got to your hotel. I've arrived. I'm going to unpack, take a shower, go out, have something to eat. Your day is over. And at that point, my laptop is missing. It's like the worst thing that can happen. Or your passport is missing, right? Where is my passport? And I kind of go through that myself like 10 times a day because I've been a little bit disorganized lately, trying to live several lives at the same time. I'm trying to live an Indonesian life and a Malaysian life and a backpacking life and a YouTube life and a cycling life. And I lose track, like this, my vice grips. I lose track of things. I forget that I even have these things. I don't know where they are. And then all day long, I have little moments of panic where I'm suddenly thinking, oh, where's my passport? And, oh, where's my wallet? Every time I put on my shorts, my pants, I kind of tap the pockets just to reassure myself that my wallet is there, where I left it. And if I hit the wrong pocket by mistake and the pocket feels empty, I get this little adrenaline dump, like, oh, it's over here, huh? Or if I go to a new country or something and I clean out my wallet so it isn't as stuffed with old business cards and I don't have as much money in it as normal, so everything is much thinner, so suddenly I feel for my wallet instinctively and I don't feel it all of a sudden because now it's really, really thin, and I tap the pocket. No wallet there. Where is it? I check all the pockets. No, where's my wallet? I'm panicking. And then, oh, it is there. It's just really thin now because I removed a bunch of stuff. It's just like, I swear 10 times a day I have this panic, this jolt now. It's like, where? And then in his case, he had that moment of panic, and then it just got worse and worse and worse as he discovered that, he didn't just put his laptop in the wrong pocket, it was gone, and he had no memory of what happened to it. So that is Nick K, the travel vlogger. And with that story, I think I'm going to shut down for this morning. I'm going to spend probably the rest of the day. It's going to take a long time to edit the video from yesterday. So that's going to be most of my day today. I'll go out exploring the village a little bit, get something to eat, of course, things like that. But I have lots of other things to talk about. I have a pop culture update, some things that I've been watching, podcasts that I've been listening to, all that kinds of stuff. But I think it's time to get started with the day, so I'm going to end it there with my YouTube stories and settle in and get to work. Got to do some editing now. And with that, all right, thanks for joining me this morning for my morning journal session, and I'll see you in the next video.